When I was a small child, Winnie the Pooh was a favorite set of stories. The books by A.A. Milne, but also the movies and the short films produced by the Walt Disney Company, which put music to many of my favorite words. Of all the stories, a favorite was Winnie the Pooh and the Blustery Day. Maybe you know it. Parents, do any of you know this? Does it play in your houses? It's the story of a rainy day and a flood, and of how one haphazard friend comes to rescue another more vulnerable friend. As contemporary scripture lessons go, and stories that are good for Sunday school children, it's about as good as it gets. And in the Disney version, there's this rather catchy tune, the refrain of which includes the lyrics, "And the rain, rain, rain came down, down, down." It's catchy and an earworm, and it's one that I'm embarrassed to admit gets caught in my own ears rather more than it should, a grown person that I am without any children in my household. It is, however, a well-known fact that in my house I generally sing with the dogs each morning, and this is one of the ways that I try to cheer Toby up on rainy days when he sits wistfully by the window longing to go outside, but dreadfully afraid of rain. This week has been a week of rather a lot of rain, metaphorically speaking, of rain coming down, down, down. I'm not going to get into the full workings of the collegiate church right now, but suffice it to say the executive committee has called itself into emergency meeting this evening, and Catherine and I will have more information with all of you very soon. Maybe it's been raining in your worlds too. And maybe you've seen the weather forecast for this coming week and know that rain is indeed in the forecast for the coming days. Where was it during those scorching July and August days? I'm glad it's here now, but it does make for rather gloomy autumn days. So maybe you too need some morning songs to cast away the gloom. I've already commended Winnie the Pooh to you, but for those of you more seriously inclined, there are no end of amazing songs about rain. I've been thinking about them all week. I started a list early in the week, and in no particular order, let me give you a playlist for the coming storms. For rainy days, which, rather like Mondays, thanks carpenters, always get me down, you could start with a prayer, and you could think of Bill Ellison and his current work in the pit orchestra of the current Broadway production, praying that, I hope it doesn't rain on my parade. You could go Gene Kelly style and go singing in it. It might be Purple, where you come from. Or maybe if you're the single ladies, and I use that term as broadly as I can, you might prefer it to be Raining Men. You could go with the pandemic anthem from Lady Gaga and Ariana Grande of Rain on Me, or you could follow Adele's lead and set fire to it. You could think about the 1990s. You could put on some flannel and some grungy jeans. You could think of that awful Gen X anthem, I'm Only Happy When It Rains, or that great Guns N' Roses ballad, November Rain. These are some songs about rain. There are indeed church songs about rain too. There are worship songs about rain, but most of them do fall into the camp of contemporary Christian music or praise and worship categories. And while I know many of you have the good grace to let me rattle off classic movie, Broadway, or pop songs, I'm under no delusion that you wouldn't run me right out of this pulpit if I introduced praise and worship music. That would be a rainy day indeed. But for any of you, which I imagine is most of us, for any of you following any sort of news cycle at all right now, there are so many storm clouds gathering in the geopolitical, economic, and social arenas of our lives. The storms are so many, you can pick a category and go deep down a rainy rabbit hole. I don't particularly recommend this, but in the words of the plane's captain, ladies and gentlemen, we have a bit of weather in front of us, so I'm turning on the seatbelt sign and asking you to return to your seats. A bit of weather in front of us is a good phrase, don't you think? I know that for many of you, there is a bit of weather going on in our lives. Global, communal, yes, but also personal. Just bits of weather that we're all weathering through. and songs for rainy days can be balms for our souls. So too can Scripture. Near the beginning of the prophet Joel's account of Holy Miracle, Joel reminds the children of Israel to be glad and to rejoice, for God has given rain for their vindication. I don't often think of rain as being particularly vindicating, but I do like a God who surprises us with what we really need when we don't even know how really lost we are. In Joel, God pours down abundant rain, early and late rain, rain in the evening, rain in the morning, rain, 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 just as it was before. And the rain leads to crops that grow, and the full-grown crops lead to harvest, which feeds. And there is again plenty and enough for all of God's people. This is a holy miracle here. It is vindication of God's people, of the people that God has punished with years of locusts and hoppers and destroyers of crops. And in my house, I can tell you a thing or two about destroyers of crops. On the land that I am lucky to till, I will tell you what vindication from the deer who chomped down on my hydrangeas would be, what vindication from the moles that terrorize my dogs, to say nothing of the lawn. And friends, I had planned to bring you apples. It is the squirrels and raccoons who ate them instead of you, and I am seeking vindication that God will send netting and pest sprays and rain next season. I will pray. I will pray for these abundant rains to come and to grow again the harvest of before. I will pray for abundant health for all of us, to restore us to a world that we knew and loved from before. I will pray for abundant hope to help us weather the weather, whatever the weather, whether we like it or not. And throughout Scripture, throughout all of Scripture, there are countless allusions to rain, to water, and to things being poured out upon us. It is one of the two sacraments of the church that we fill this font with water and rain it down on new life. In the Joel text this morning, God promises to pour out my Spirit and to show portents in the heavens and on the earth. Portents is a good word for our time. It's not a word in most of our common lexicons, but it is a scriptural word. It's a prophecy word. It's a word that shows up frequently in Advent, and all of heaven and earth hold our breath, looking for signs of something monumental about to happen. And this is why I love Advent so much, perhaps even more than I love Christmas. I love the looking. I love the stargazing. The anticipation, the calm before the storm, the preparation before the festival, the sort of rainy day list making that looks forward to a time that is not yet here, but that is noticing all that we can about where we are today. My friend, who is also my preaching and my gardening mentor, Donna Scopper, says that November is the gardener's favorite month. It's a time far enough away from summer that the disasters of this past season are being forgotten. And it's still far enough away from next spring's work that we can sit inside with seed catalogs and design books and plant lists, dreaming about that perfect garden we will finally have next year. She says it's a time of deep illusion, and it's a wonderful time for the gardener of reality. I've come to agree with her. November is a fanciful time of imagining the bounty of God without beating ourselves up too much for the failures of our own hands. For even now, God is pouring out God's Spirit upon us and upon all people. And this is a spirit of power and of love and of justice. It is also a spirit of joy. Now, joy is a word that we often use, but sometimes I feel we don't truly steep ourselves in the promise of what it offers. As good Protestants, we often withhold joy. We protest it. Joy comes in the morning, we sing, not now. Joy comes tomorrow, or in the great tomorrow, when from our labors we will rest. Joy is something for down the road, for when the sun will come out tomorrow. It's not for today. But what I see in the signs and the portents that are all around us, what I see in the weary faces and the unbalanced, overbusy lives, what I see in the demands of school children and anxious parents, what I see in the demands of people wondering what to do going back to the office, where to live, how to live, to mask or not to mask, that is the question of our times. I see signs and portents of the rain that is all around us, and I see a great need for more joy. I don't even know if it's something that we are aware of needing more of. For surely it is all around us. Joy is in the air that we breathe. It is all around us. It comes from God. Maybe, though, it's something that we need to get better at letting in, at accepting, at living into ourselves, of finding our joy and of letting it out. How often do we put our joy aside in favor of what we have to do rather than what we want to do, of what we could do rather than what we should do? How often do we put our joy aside because it's not what society or work or school or our families think it should be? Sunday school children know that there is joy, 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 joy down in my heart, down in my heart. But maybe the church upstairs doesn't do as good of a job helping joy escape our heart, come up to our lips and our mouths, to share with one another, to let the joy come up, 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 up to our smiles and our eyes, to be a joyful harbinger of God's light in the world. What the Sunday school children know is that joy is a deep emotion. It's different from happiness. But what we could all use is more practice in being the depth of who we are and bringing the depth of who we are, of our joy, up to the surface of our lives, to share it and to share the plenty and the abundance of what God has brought and grown and reigned upon in each of our lives. There are rainy days ahead. And there have been rainy days before. We are no stranger to the rain. And some of us might even like drinking pina coladas and getting caught in it every once in a while. One of my favorite movies when I was a younger person was a movie called Four Weddings and a Funeral. Maybe you know it. I'll tell you more about why this is a perfect film and can show you pictures from my early 20s when my hair was of Hugh Grant proportions. That's for another time. But at the very end of that movie, there's a scene between Andie MacDowell and Hugh Grant. Andie MacDowell's character arrives at Hugh's flat drenched after a catastrophically disastrous day. It's been pouring. And this is the sort of rain that we don't know in America, but that if you've ever spent time in England, you understand. It's the sort of rain that umbrellas are useless against. It's the sort of rain that rains up and sideways at you, that gets you wet long before your hair even notices. Andie MacDowell arrives in a gray linen suit and overcoat. She's soaked to the core. And Hugh Grant tries to rush her inside to dry her off. Come in, come in, come in. And she resists, saying, there comes a point where you just can't get any more wet. And with that, Mr. Grant's character steps out into the rain with her. There comes a point where you just can't get any more wet. So true, don't you think? So true. There comes a point where you are just so very, very wet, so very much feet on the ground, so very much who you are, so very vulnerable and hoping and expecting and seen and longing and knowing and joyful and so very, very wet with your humanity that you just can't do anything else. And in that moment, someone else may see you, and they may join you, and they may jump into the deep end with you or join you getting soaked in what God is pouring down. And in that downpour, there is joy. There is joy in being seen. There is joy in being together. There is joy in hope and joy in longing. O children of God, be glad and rejoice in your God. For God is making it rain upon the earth for your vindication. Yes, your vindication and for your blessing. Maybe it's time to stop hiding under the umbrella. Stop pretending that you're not thirsting for this life-giving water. Stop trying to be so dry that you miss the river of life and its currents that are longing to carry you to new life. Maybe the rain won't be as bad as we think it is. I'm sure it won't be as comfortable as we hope it is. But maybe it's the source of joy. Maybe the rain brings joy with it, with every drop. Every drop from heaven, a source of joy. A joy that each of us need, a joy that God promises to all.